Okay, today we're going to talk about Zillow and ChatGPT. Recently, ChatGPT released a software developer kit, which, just like a lot of operating systems, iOS, macOS, Windows, when you release a software developer kit, that allows other companies to create applications that work on your platform. So Zillow is in ChatGPT. However, ChatGPT is not in Zillow. If you go to Zillow and you try and do stuff, it is simply Zillow. But if you go to ChatGPT, there's an option to access Zillow information within there. So let's take a look at how that works. First, when you go into your ChatGPT, on the bottom left-hand side, there's a place where you can access your settings. At least that's where it is now. And then you can have a section of called apps and connections. Now, there's two different things. One, connections have been around for a little while, maybe about 6 months, and that's where you could connect your Gmail, your Microsoft Outlook, and that kind of stuff. And it's more they share information, kind of ping back and forth. So it allows you to go to ChatGPT and say, hey, did I get an email from blah, blah, blah. But apps are different. Apps are when the actual application is developed and works within ChatGPT and works with it more in a more integrated manner. So you can turn on Zillow this way, but I've done searches, and by default, if it knows you're searching for something for real estate, it will volunteer the app. Remember, it's AI. So it senses what you're working on, and it will volunteer the app and ask, would you like to access the Zillow app within to also help you with this? So, what data is Zillow sharing? They are restricted on what they can share. So, it's not everything in there. Now, I'm going to bring up two different things. This was a screenshot of earlier when it was a search. Well, what does it actually share? The address, the region, price type, blah, blah, blah. Bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, the lot size, the year built, the home status, that sort of thing, features and amenities, and pay attention to some of these things. The features and amenities are the ones that are clicked and listed in the description, listing photos and map data. It can, even if there's things that you put in there, keywords such as it's close to shopping and so on, and I'll explain a little bit while that's very important. But if you were to ask again, it is AI. So you can ask it the same question twice and you'll get two different answers, pretty much the same a lot of times, but it'll look a little different. So the reason why I'm sharing this is that if you wanted to go ahead and say, like, I don't remember everything Rob talked about because he was just blabbering on and on, that's fine. You can look it up and see, but it won't look exactly like mine did right now because it'll change the more that you do that. What is actually in there is the data set that they're allowed to share and what ChatGPT can learn from. But it's not every little thing in there. So there's some things to understand about that. One, I recently just sold in Hacienda Heights, so I'm using that as an example. What homes are available in Hacienda Heights that are 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and has a pool? So here are some homes that it came up with. But I want you to look at the bottom. See right here? It asked me, use Zillow for this answer. This is when I mentioned earlier that when people now go into ChatGPT and they try and search for something, it will bring up different things it can find on the web. But do you want to use Zillow? And then most people obviously are going to click on yes. And then that way it'll use Zillow to get all the answers. Now, this is where some people are panicking because it's like, oh my God, it's replacing us. No, it's not replacing us. It's another search tool, much like when Zillow and Redfin first came out. It's another search tool that can be used, but we are much more than just search tools. Plus, it doesn't have all the information that's actually in there. So, there's some things that it can find, some things it can't find. But what I want also us to pay attention to is here when I asked, well, what are some bedrooms, and here's the results. When I said, hey, okay, do it in Zillow, this is how it got displayed in Zillow. And I want you to see that you can actually click on it and it'll bring up all that information right within ChatGPT and show you everything in there. Don't forget, ChatGPT is not just a search. It is AI. So it's remembering what you're looking for. So if you put in this sort of search, it'll know you've been looking for this sort of thing. If you put in keywords, it'll remember those keywords. All those sort of things it will remember. But the other thing I want you to be aware of is using it to your advantage. First, not everything is going to be available. So if you have buyers and they're wanting to use this, much like a lot of our buyers are using Zillow and Redfin and asking us questions, there's still information it's not going to have. It's not going to have the private remarks in there. It's not going to have that kind of information. So somebody sees a home, let's just say somebody sees a home and it's for sale, but they're having to do a lease back, and that's in the private remarks. There's an issue with the trust, and it may delay. Any of those sort of things, that's when you can show your value and say, well, let me do some research on it and get some more. But there's another part of this that if you're on the listing side is really important to understand. In Hacienda Heights, the other reason why I picked that example, there is a very large temple that's very popular in the area. So I put in there, search for homes in Hacienda Heights that are 4 bedrooms and mention it is close to the temple. And it brought up all these listings in there. Now, that is not a check mark in the MLS. That is in the public remarks. So now start putting things in your public remarks that people may search for and ChatGPT can pick up on. Does it have things such as hiking trails? Is it close to shopping? Um, is Does it have a sunset view? Any of those sort of things are the kind of things that will not be in the MLS, but will be in your description and people may be searching for. So those key things are going to make a big difference. Also, it cannot look at pictures. So you may have a beautiful view of the mountains. You may have a beautiful view of the ocean. You may have a great view of the Hollywood sign. But if it's only shown in the picture, ChatGPT cannot pick that up. So you'd want to make sure you put that in the description itself so ChatGPT can pick that up. And that's another thing you can leverage also with the buyer side is you can say, hey, let me check this out because even though you look on ChatGPT, it can't look at the photos. It can't look at other information. I can do that for you. Now, there's a little bit more to this, but I figured that's a big enough chunk for today. I'll share more later.